Hello, this is David. Let's take a look at trading strategies that involve options in John Hall. This reading builds on prior chapters in John Hall, in particular mechanics of option markets and properties of stock option markets. So you do want to be familiar with mechanics and properties of stock options in order to appreciate the trading strategies that we look at here. There are only 3 learning objectives, although there are more than 3 strategies. However, we will notice that what helps here is that there are common patterns or groups that makes this a little bit easier to look at some of these strategies. Before we take a look at the learning objectives in particular, I just want to alert you to some terminology here. And I know from history teaching this topic that this can be confusing. But what we have here is the difference between a payoff and a profit diagram. On the left, I've plotted or diagrammed a payoff. In this case, it's for a short call position, or we would say if you write a call. This is probably a European call option. And the payoff is simply the future gain or loss on this option. I would know that actually because this payoff diagram plots at a y-intercept of 0 for low values of the future stock price. I don't have this labeled here, but the x-axis is the future stock price with an emphasis on future. So with a short call position at low future stock prices, there will be 0 intrinsic value. That option will expire worthlessly. And the payoff to the short position, or that's the counterparty who writes that call option, will be 0. If the future stock price is higher, then the writer of the call option, the short position, is going to be making a payment to whoever holds that option or has the long position. So that's a loss to them, as signified here by the 45-degree line. Higher future stock price is a loss on the short call position. But it's a payoff because we're only looking at the future point in time, in this case, expiration or maturity of that European option, and the gain or loss to the position. So the payoff is a future point in time. The profit simply subtracts the initial cost. After all, that would be important. If we want to expecting a profit, we need to subtract the cost of the option. And so here I have a profit diagram. This is a little different because in addition to the short call, it adds a long stock. So the short call is covered by a long stock position, and together they constitute a covered call strategy. That's diagrammed in purple. We'll look at the strategy shortly. That's not the point here. The point here is to show that this is a profit diagram as opposed to a payoff diagram. And the difference is that the initial cost has been subtracted. So let's look at just the short call. Notice it's in dashed red, and the shape of it is identical to the payoff. The only difference is it's actually shifted up by the cost, or $2. And now this is the more relevant plot for the short call counterparty, because at low future stock prices, these x-axis is still the future stock price. After all, this is a range of outcomes given the possible future stock prices. Notice at low, over here at the left, low future stock prices, that short call, there is no payoff, but the short call did, of course, collect the initial premium, in this case of $2. So that's the profit. In this case, the cost was a negative, so it's really subtracting a negative or adding a positive. And we can see that for the writer of this short call, there's a profit, albeit it's fixed at that initial premium, and then the profit is impacted negatively. So shift of the curve, that's the profit. Profit equals payoff minus cost. The only other note about that is that if you're studying finance, of course you know that we would normally account for the time value of money. The option premium is collected or paid today, but the payoff is collected only in the future, so it would have less value than would be displayed in the payoff. So the present value of the profit is going to be less than displayed in the profit diagram. Well, we ignore that. Generally speaking, for profit diagrams, we ignore the impact of time value of money. It's just a complication we don't worry about.